Good day, everyone. I am Matt Harrison, and you are listening to the Cast, the Malaga fan podcast for all the Gearys out there. Malaga have begun their 2025, and they've dismissed the whole notion of new year, new me by doing their favourite trick from 2024, drawing a game of football. It was a tricky encounter at La Rosaleda with a tough Depor team, giving Malaga a tough game, especially a certain young winger who was causing devastation down the wing and giving Depor a 1-0 lead. I'm sure we will discuss that winger during this podcast. However, from 1-0 down, Malaga fired back at Depor in the closing minutes to make it 1-1, courtesy of our very own Super Duper Chupe, the young striker we've been desperate to see in the first team after his goal-scoring exploits for Atletico Malagueño so far this season. Plus, as well as reviewing that game against Depor, we'll have the usual news from around Malaga Club de Football, including a former Malaga hero has moved clubs today and has returned to Spanish football. And speaking of the transfer window, here's a man who the Cast is refusing to sell and has an astronomical release clause against his name to push away any other podcast suitors. It is, of course, my Cast co-host, Nick Bell. How are you, Nick Bell?
Evening, Matt. Not doing too badly. Nice to see you again. Obviously, it's not been too long since I was in your presence.
It was indeed just a few days ago. How was that very sudden shift from the Costa del Sol to a very cold northwest of England been?
Very cold. I think I surmised.
Go on, sorry.
I think I surmised it yesterday with a how have I gone from being in 22 degrees Malaga sunshine, drinking cervezas, to walking the dog in the pouring rain in -2, picking up said dog's deposits. Let's say deposits. This is a family-friendly podcast at times, so yeah, it's definitely a turnaround for the worse, and it's just unbelievable. And like you say, you're there for such a short time, but you make the most of it, and absolutely, amazing as always. Always a great visit. Always good to see yourself and everybody else as well.
Yeah, it was a very good weekend, and as you said, I think you did quite well with the weather in the day. Anyway, the afternoons was very sunny and pleasant, a bit chillier in the night, but we'll leave it there. Of course, we'll talk about that Saturday evening in more depth, as this is the usual review podcast, so that is coming up shortly. As always, we'll go through some of the news around Malaga Club de Football. We're going to go to the end of last week first. I don't think there's much to sort of get through here, but it's worth mentioning that Malaga did release a statement. I think it was on Friday last week, the day after we recorded the preview pod. Danny Olmo, or the Danny Olmo case, who I feel sorry for Pau Victor in this. He's getting overlooked in this a little bit because he's part of this too. Of course, we're talking about Barcelona not being allowed to register Danny Olmo and Pau Victor because they didn't sort of fall under their financial fair play, or I always forget what they call it here, the salary cap and all that stuff. The Barcelona were over that, so couldn't register them. Barcelona tried to get these deals done really quickly with they've got a big deal with Nike, which I think they got done, and they sold VIP boxes to people in the Middle East, and they thought that would generate enough money to get them, or mean they were able to register those two players, but that wasn't the case. La Liga said no, and Barcelona went above La Liga to the CSD, which are sort of, I don't know, they regulate these things, some sporting board, and they overturned it and said Barcelona can register these two players. Now you're thinking, well, what's this got to do with Malaga? This is a Malaga podcast, but some will recall at the start of the 2019-2020 season, Malaga signed Shinji Okazaki, and I forgot the other guy's name because it was, again, he's the Pau Victor of this. His name's something Rodriguez. I've got Alvaro Rodriguez in my head, but I'm going to double check that in a second. But when we did have Shinji Okazaki on his way, he was very much front and center of the club's marketing campaign that summer, only to be told you can't register him. Malaga appealed, weren't allowed to register him. He went off to Huesca. He escaped the madness that was Malaga Club de Football. Do you think Malaga were right to release a statement about this, Nick? Do you think they were right to lodge a complaint 5 years after, they'd had their own incident with this sort of salary cap and things like that?
Well, I think they would be remiss not to, but I think every club in Spain has an opinion on this because everyone's, very much brushed with the same set of rules, and they are very strict rules. Look at it compared to some of the rules we have here in the UK. There is flexibilities around them. Barcelona are famed for pulling on these. Is it palencas? Is it levers and palencas? These financial levers which they can do to try and avoid, registering players or not being able to register players, having to sell players of higher value. Obviously, the Malaga case is very interesting with the Shinji Okazaki thing a few years ago, but even more recently, the football financial regulations in Spain are that tight. We've had to go through, several rounds of redundancies with staff, non-playing staff, more importantly as well, people with, not the highest paid jobs in the world, in order to meet these profit and sustainability rules, which the Spanish FA, more importantly, not just La Liga, apply to everybody. So for Barcelona to come in and say, oh, well, actually, we want to register, like you say, Pau Victor is the kind of the innocent bystander, is because he was already at the club.
Yeah.
To register this superstar Dani Olmo just so they can basically keep Dani Olmo in Spain, which is the only reason why I would say this has happened, so he doesn't walk out for nothing and join a Premier League team, for example. Kind of spits in the face of everybody else that have to just turn up their collar and get on with it. Do you know what I mean? Like you say, that summer, Malaga probably saw a massive opportunity with Okazaki, not just to have a pretty talented footballer for this level at that time. He'd just come back off winning the Premier League with Leicester, for crying out loud, but also the financial reward of having somebody of that profile from that market in football is a big thing, and they pummeled money into it. I believe you ended up with a shirt with the Japanese writing on the back. You know what I mean? So there was an incredible expense that went towards that, which they just didn't get back. So I think on behalf of all Malaga, but all just Spanish football, everyone who did object to this has done their part to really say this isn't fair. And I don't think this will be the last we hear of it either. I think there's more to come on this as we get through this year.
Yeah, it'd be interesting with them, like you said, this Palancas FC, as some people call them, that those levers, they're going to run out eventually, and who knows in like a few years' time when Joan Laporta's maybe left and the mess that's going to be left at that club. It's very worrying it's going to be, I think, to be a Barcelona fan when it all comes around. But yeah, they do seem to have been saved for now. It is gone to like a sort of like, they're investigating now, but while they're investigating, that's going to take like six to 9 months. So Dani Olmo and Pau Victor can play. Yeah. Malaga's statement, they added, Malaga Club de Football was also forced to compete with a maximum of 18 professional players for 2 seasons and forced into a sporting ere that is now part of the history of our club, causing serious economic and sporting damage to the club. It goes on, only a titanic effort from its structure and the unconditional support, once again, of the Malaguismo kept Malaga Club de Football afloat in one of the most difficult chapters of its recent history. So, yeah, I think they are right to highlight it. And like you said, a few other clubs, I think Valencia and I think Atletico Madrid. Interestingly, the one club that hasn't come out is Real Madrid, because of obviously their bizarre love-hate partnership with Barcelona, where they sort of the yin and yang of La Liga in a way, aren't they? They rely on each other almost. And can I just say, just quickly, but while I remember, apologies to Jose Rodriguez, who was the other guy. It wasn't Alvaro Rodriguez. I knew it was Rodriguez, but sorry, what was he going to say, Nick?
I was just going to say those two are a monopoly on this league. I mean, like you say, the fact that everything can be skewed to their preference, and we only have to look at the Super Copa this week gone past, where obviously those two were in the final once again, and getting all these fans being played in Saudi Arabia, and then Mallorca, who've, an incredible feat for them to get there, as the same with Athletic Club as well. They've removed it for the benefit of Barcelona and Real Madrid. There's no two ways about it. The money's good for them, the money's good for the league, and everything's skewed towards them. So I can see why there's lots of resentment from clubs up and down Spain against this blatant, I suppose, bias towards those top two clubs. It's ridiculous, and they should have been. And don't get me wrong, I know they've had their problems with it. They've not got away with it scot-free in the last few years, but this is just a blatant fuck you to everybody else because we're going to back the big boys. And that's why Real Madrid have been quiet, because one day they'll need to pull maybe that card out if they need it, or they might need a favour in a decision, and Barcelona won't be able to complain about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll get away from the rigmarole of Spanish football and financial fair play and all those, but we are going to stay in Barcelona. We're going to go to the other side of the city, though, because we're going to talk about transfer news, a big sort of bit of Malaga adjacent transfer news today, which has been announced this afternoon. It was sort of rumored yesterday. It is about last year's hero of the promotion, or one of the big heroes of the promotion, Roberto. So for those, I'm sure, are aware that listen regularly, he has been playing out in Portugal with Braga, who have played in the Europa League. So he's been playing European football. But I guess the point of this transfer is he hasn't been playing that much football. He's played 30 games for Braga, but many of them off the bench and not too many minutes. Scored 3 goals, but he is moving to Espanyol on loan till the end of the season. For me, I'm up for this. I'm happy to see him just playing in the top league of Spanish football, which you could argue is, well, I think it's definitely a step up from the top Portuguese league. Whether you think Braga or Espanyol are a bigger club, that's obviously a bit more debatable. But I think this is a good move for him, Nick.
Yeah, it's certainly a good move for him. Decent business for Espanyol as well to get a young, hungry player of his talent in the team. I can't quite understand why it's not worked out for him at Braga. Obviously, I know there's been some changes there and his opportunities have been restricted, but I put on Twitter earlier, I got to ask myself this question. If it had been known that Roberto was available for loan or whatever it might be, would you as Malaga have not decided to put all your chips on the table, maybe remove some of those sell-on particles or any money that you would be getting back in payment to say, tell you what, if you're going to loan him out to anyone, loan him back to us for the second half of the season. It certainly is Espanyol's game, and we need someone like Roberto so badly. So, again, it would be a slim chance if it would have happened anyway, but I would have moved heaven and earth to try and get him back at Malaga, knowing that he could be the difference between Malaga finishing 15th or 5th. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I suppose the issue there, because I do agree that would be a very good idea for us. But those like add-ons, I believe the two that he had mentioned were 50 appearances for Braga, which could happen, but it looks like they're trying to shift in before that happens, and them qualifying for the Champions League. So whether we would have got those add-ons, which is about 1 million, if I remember rightly, or just over 1 million. They paid 1.8 million for him. That's the sort of upfront fee, although I think they're paying that in parts. But yeah, and also it's a good opportunity for him, I think, Espanyol, because they've I think they're the second lowest goal scorers in La Liga. I think they maybe joint with someone. They don't really have a goal scoring striker. I had a look earlier. They've got the Irvan Cardona, who I think is on loan from Augsburg, but with some weird link to San Etienne, which I can't remember. He scored 1 goal, and Valid Chedira scored 1 goal. And then that, I forgot his first name. Is it Javier Puardo? It's definitely Puardo, who's I've always really liked. I remember he was really good down here in Segunda. But he's a bit more of a winger, sort of number 10. So as far as I could tell, there's no real obvious striker there. So there is an opportunity there for him if he can like step in. And they are in the relegation zone at the moment, but they're only 1 point away. So it'd be great to see if he can have an impact. Who knows? Roberto in the Spain squad by the summertime when he starts banging them in for Espanyol. But yes,
so it's a huge shop window for him, isn't it? Opportunity wise, like you say, to go in and make a difference there. And you know, we can speculate as to why it's gone wrong at Braga so quickly, but I think a big part of it is there's maybe an assumption sometimes that life in Portugal can't be too much different, but I bet it's not as easy as you think it is. Obviously, there is a sort of a language barrier there. There are different customs and different ways of doing things. So being back in Spain might do in the world of good. Do you know what I mean? And certainly playing the Liga football. I think Luca was the one who told me before that I think Espanyol have got an option to sign him for 10 million or something like that if they want to. But I don't see that happening. But again, for somebody else to come in and bid Braga for him in the future, and he could set himself off on a nice career in La Liga, which I think we'd all be happy for him to do.
Yeah. I don't think there's any resentment from the Malaga camp when he left. Obviously, perhaps a little bit of needle with the club he chose with our transfer history with Braga. But yes, we should say as well, like Braga, north of Portugal, it's a very different world to the south coast, or certainly the Costa del Sol of Spain. And of course, we have recent history with young Malaga player moving to the north of Portugal and it not quite working out in young Kevin as well. So, and actually, incidentally, is one of Kevin's former teammates, Fran Navarro, is the reason why Roberto's going, really, because that's who Braga have just signed as a striker. I think he went to Porto. I saw Fran Navarro play when I went to watch Kevin at Gil Vicente. There's not really any other news coming out of Malaga transfer-wise. I think we should perhaps mention that, Antonito has truly made it now. He popped up on Fabrizio Romano's social media feed and being linked. So, he's made it. That's how a young player judges if they've made it these days. I think it just said something like, he's been, like 5 goals, 4 assists, or the other way around.
Yeah. A host of European clubs. Nice and broad from good old Fabrizio there, isn't it? But it is often a kiss of death in him because he doesn't say things. I think he does say things just to, for sake of it. He must have a team behind him now that sort of like sift through rumours and just post stuff just to get clickbait and stuff like that. But there's always with Fabrizio Romano, there must be something to it. And the fact that obviously it's not just Real Madrid and Barcelona that are interested. I think it was Bayern Munich that were knocking around, being mentioned a few months back or something like that. So
I bet Como interested. They seem to be interested in everyone these days.
Yeah, Como could be the way to go. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see whether there is anything there or whether he is staying or not. Obviously, that's the transfer saga which continues for the club at the moment because they're very much trying to put the eggs in his basket. But not much coming back at the moment.
This wasn't planned, this, by the way. I sort of had a scour of sort of the news earlier, and this story caught my eye. So I'll just throw it out there quickly as and in other news, sort of transfer news. And we go to Barcelona again, but not that one. We're going to Ecuador because former Malaga striker Felipe Caicedo has signed for Barcelona in Ecuador, which I thought was fun. 36-year-old Caicedo, who I didn't know was still playing. I just always thought it was quite cool. Someone going back home. I think he's one of these ones that's done a bit of a tour. I think there might be some Man City fans listening that remember him playing for them when he was very, very young and was one of these.
There's a few, wasn't there? Lazio was his big sort of big club, wasn't it? Yeah. Was he at Wigan as well, or is that a different one?
I think that was someone else. There's been a few Caicedos, isn't there?
I remember one turn up at Wigan,
but he's
with every other person from South America as well at one point that went through Wigan's JJB Stadium. Dave Whelan loved a shopping spree in South America, didn't he?
Yeah, now that's the realm of Brighton and Hove Albion. So
yes.
With the other Caicedo, the Chelsea one started. Anyway. Yeah, just really quickly, it's not much other news. So I don't think we mentioned this last week, but I'll just throw it out there now that, again, Izan Moreno and Antonito have been called up to the Spain under-19 squad, which usually means they're not going to play for us, but it's this week. They are playing a friendly, I think, tomorrow, which will be Wednesday at Las Rosas against Italy, and with Malaga playing their next game on Monday, they should be in the squad for Monday. At least, whether they, Izan Marino's not really starting for us, but whether Antonito starts, that might be. We'll see. Although there has been injury news today with Kevin. Kevin's picked up an injury today, and he won't play against Mirandes next Monday. So maybe Antonito comes in, but we'll have those conversations on the preview show later in the week. So go and check that out ahead of our game against Mirandes. Yeah, and then just go into the youth teams. Of course, we usually talk about Atletico Malagueño now, which we will do here, but we've got to give a shout out to the Juvenil first, who have got to the last 16 of the sort of youth Copa del Rey. They beat Tenerife 5-2 away, despite going 1-0 down in the first minute as well. So they're in the last 16. That is definitely something to shout about for our young Malaga team there. We like all the youth teams doing well, don't we, Nick? It's nice to see the success spreading even further down the sort of Malaga youth pyramid, I guess.
Well, we both know that Malaga's cantera is becoming a bit of a goldmine as of late, and we see the ones progressing through, and the talent starts within Juvenil. So it's no surprise that they're doing well. But, to see them go on and make a real name for themselves and compete with some of the top teams in this country, I'm all for it. It's good publicity. And again, a good sign that we've got a good future coming through as well, especially with obviously all the deals that went through to really lock up the Malaga province and the Costa del Sol feeder teams as well. It shows that there is a good pathway for them.
Absolutely. And then before we talk about the seniors, let's give a shout out to Atletico Malagueño, who I think we referenced on the last podcast, had a big game this weekend, joint top of the league with Real Jaén. Winner went top of the league. Atletico Malagueño won 2-0 at the Ciudad Deportiva. Chupe scored again. That's 17 goals in 14 games. Nick, he needs to play for the first team.
Yeah, you'd think maybe someone had been saying that for a while, and that there's an opportunity for him to bring some of that goal-scoring form into the Spanish Segunda. I'm not sidekick, but I can see it in our future. Yes. Obviously, a great weekend for the lad, and a great weekend for Atletico Malagueño as well, because that is a tough game, and Real Jaén have been a real thorn in their side the last few years, obviously beating them in the playoffs previously. In front of a sellout crowd as well. Let's not forget, there was a notion and a little bit of interest that I might try and go to this game. But as soon as I saw that it was a sellout, I was like, well, there's no point now. But shows that there is enthusiasm for that team too, which is, great. When you look at the stadium on Saturday, you look at the training ground on Sunday, you look at the youth team beating Tenerife. I don't think you'll get many better weekends as a Malaga fan, really.
Yes, and definitely young Chupete will not have many better weekends, as I'm sure we'll discuss even further as we talk about the night before at La Rosaleda, the 1-1 draw against Depor. So let's get into that review. And as always, let's go to the starting 11. I don't think there's any real shocks here, so I'll just read some of the sort of headlines and you can pick what you want to talk about. I guess we talked on the last pod, the usual Joaquin over Puga or the other way round. Who do we rather? And I think we both said it's Carlos Puga's place now. But Joaquin started this game. We can perhaps talk about why that was and look at that a bit more as we get through this analysis. Pastor and Monte at centre-back. That seems to be the centre-back partnership of choice now. But, of course, Einar is very, very close behind. Dioni back up front. We did perhaps talk about would Rocco play, but Rocco struggled with a viral infection. So he wasn't even on the bench, I don't think, in the end. I don't think he was.
I don't think he was, no.
And yeah, I hadn't really thought about it till really the game got underway. But obviously, like Antonito and Kevin on the team sheet isn't like too much of a surprise. But when they lined up, it was quite strange to see Antonito out on the right, actually, because it's usually been him or Kevin, mainly through sort of, I don't know, injuries or Antonito being rested. So it was quite interesting to see them both. Perhaps we will start with the right back thing. I've got my theory here, Nick, and I think we've sort of discussed this on previous pods. I think he went with Hockey just because he's slightly more defensive. And of course, he came up against a very, very tricky winger indeed in Yeremay. Do you think that was why, maybe?
I think that's definitely got to be in Sergio's thought processes in terms of getting a right back who will essentially try and man mark Yeremay out of this game. It didn't quite work that way, unfortunately. But I don't think Hockey disgraced himself in this game, to be fair. I thought it was, again, good going forward. But Puga just brings you a different dimension, and he can do everything else as well that Hockey can do defensively. So I think it's a good idea on paper, but it's naive in practice, in my opinion. And I think, we are better with Puga in the team. And I think, Yeremay, as we'll discuss, had a really good game. Would he have had the same game if Puga was involved? I don't know. Maybe he wouldn't have been as effective.
I think I slipped a little bit there. So I don't know if you're following my lead. Are we going with Yeremay or Yeremay? Because I thought it was Yeremay. I did say Yeremay by accident.
I'm not too sure. I've heard both this weekend. There was loads of people saying it on Saturday as well on the Vamos recording. So I was like going, which one is it? Because I kind of don't want to say Jeremy. That's what I'm trying to avoid from saying.
Yeremay. Yeah, it'd be Yeremay, I reckon. I think it's a May, but yeah, I'm sure we're going to talk about him a lot more in this podcast. So forgive us, because as I think we'll discuss shortly, I think we might be hearing his name a lot more in the coming years. The other thing I only noticed this when I pressed the highlights back, watched the highlights video back this morning. Did you notice the whole, the captain's exchange?
No, I didn't. I saw this retrospectively, as you say, and I don't quite understand the context here, to be honest. Is it Panini that released the trading cards and they've done like a little?
Oh no, that's what it must be, because I thought they were like sort of those, I don't know, Spanish version of like match attacks, whatever they are. But I bet it's the sticker book, isn't it? Because the sticker book's still a relatively new thing.
Yeah.
So just for those
instead of exchanging the like the emblems or the crests on a flag or whatever they are. Tell you what, they know how to market in Spanish Segunda, don't they? Because everything's angled at doing something very unique and different that makes you scratch your head. And, here we go. We're talking about it, so it must therefore work.
Yeah, for those that didn't see, essentially, the two captains exchanged these sort of like A4, maybe slightly bigger sized cards. But like Alfonso Herrero gave a picture of himself to their captain, and it was it was very weird when I watched the highlights back. I did literally go, what the fuck is this?
To be fair, the fact that Martinez gets to hang a photo up of the Saint in his house is reward enough for a trip to Malaga. Never mind going away with a point.
Yeah, I don't know if he's got kids, but if he's like, the kids nagging for a sticker book and say, no, this is the sticker. You can't put this in your sticker book. You trust me. This is.
I reckon it is a big sticker. Do you reckon, like, if he wanted to, he could just peel the back off it and just maybe every player, maybe every captain now in Segunda for the second half of the season has got like a captain's giant sticker book, like an A6. A6 is small, isn't it? An A1 size sticker book that you just put them in for the rest of the season.
Oh, that would be fun. Yeah. Oh, definitely. That actually, no, I'm for this exchange of stickers now. And then like the captains having a WhatsApp group and doing swapsies and
yeah. Have you got an Alfonso Herrero? I'll trade you for it.
I moved clubs in January and I've played Alfonso Herrero twice now. I've got doubles.
Got doubles, yeah.
Anyway, I guess perhaps the reason we're talking about these stickers a bit more because I don't know. When we do these sort of agendas for the podcast, what did you make of the first half and Malaga's performance in general?
It was, to put this lightly, it was a performance that didn't match the atmosphere. So I
No.
think the first thing I'll credit is that, Christ, brilliant atmosphere from Malaga throughout. The constant cheering, the attendance obviously the highest of this season. So I know it's marketed as a sellout. It certainly felt like a sellout because every time I sat down on the seats trying to sit me and my friends together, we were being moved on. So I think fourth time was the charm for us to find somewhere where we could sit together. But from start to finish, it was great, and again, really sold Malaga as a brilliant fan base. It's just a shame the football didn't match, and I can't really put my finger on this other than this was two managers with two very similar approaches to football rocking heads. Do you know what I mean? Like, say, an immovable force meeting another immovable force, and that's where this game became turgid in want for a better word. It really was missing a La Rubia in this match. I thought he would have done really well in this game if he was available.
Yeah, because it's funny because as I think you've touched upon already, we did record a Vamos a la Rosaleda episode, which has just come out. If you want an alternative, approach to analysis of this game, or live analysis, and alternatives, not the words there. But I seem to remember, like a bit like you said, sort of really enjoying the game, and then at halftime going to say something about it and being like, "Oh yeah, there's not really anything to say." And you're right, it's probably because we'd had beers all day, and I was probably more hypnotized by the atmosphere than the football.
You're swept up, aren't you? At what point do we start renaming Vamosa as Drunk Giricast? Because I think that's what it eventually. Do you remember Drunk History on Comedy Central?
Yeah, that's true. And there is a
where we're getting towards.
There is a podcast, isn't there, where they like interview people and they get them drunk as they interview. I think our friend of the podcast, Ellis Platton's been on it. I can't remember what it's called though. But
I want to be on that podcast.
Yeah. Well, I'm having a dry week or two ahead of the next Malaga game. So yeah, you're right though. I can't think of a single one of those episodes I can't imagine what they sound like sober. I don't know what they sound like drunk because I don't really listen to them back, or very, very, very rarely. But yeah, I've just got written in my notes for this game here, meh. But actually, I will say, when I watched the highlights back this morning, just to sort of give myself a bit of a reminder, I did sort of forget how many sort of chances Depor made. Like, not like really chances, but they were certainly catching us on the break a lot. I think they were definitely the better team in the first half. And yeah, there's a few times they broke down our right and left wings, and they seemed, there was that one, I can't remember, Maya, where, with his crazy purple hair, where one-on-one with Alfonso Herrero, and he sort of curled it wide, and a few sort of gaps in our defense, definitely. And and again, we've got to mention as well, just really quickly, and people seem to think it was my fault in the stadium. Kevin's shot, the one that went out for a throw-in, but it didn't even go out for like a throw-in by the corner flag. He went out for a throw-in the ball seemed to go behind him. It's like he shot from 20 yards and it went out for a throw-in 25 yards out. But when he shot, like obviously we're in Giri corner, everyone sort of turned around and looked at me, and I was like, what?
This is what you're promoting.
That was what the look was.
It's like I said, it was like fighting with the man in the mirror, really. The difference for me in this game that went Depor's way was just basically winning the battle in the midfield, which is unusual because, the likes of Molina and Luizmi have been brilliant all season, but I think this is a time where they've come up against a real maneuverer, a real architect in there in the form of Mario Sariano, I think his name was.
Yeah, he was
very agile.
He was good in the game we played at Riazor as well. He was the one that jumped out at me more than anyone else, actually. I was really impressed with him.
Yeah.
Just a couple of things a couple of things you've said already. I'm really interested to see how Chumbo and Biznaga choices. I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's a couple of things you've dropped in there, which I think we're going to be very different this week, which is cool, which is fine. So I look forward to that. Yeah,
well,
let's
I
get.
didn't obviously watch it from 538 this year. I didn't have that overlooked view. I was pitch side this time, so I don't know if maybe I was watching a different game.
No, that's true. That's yeah. I think you were. Well, I think it's fair to say, like, I think the second half was fairly decent, and like you said, the atmosphere was good. But for me, there's only one thing that we need to talk about in this game, and I've just put on the agenda. Let's switch to the other saying this time, or the other pronunciation, just to make sure we got it right at least once. I've just put Yeremay discuss.
Yeremay discussed, yeah. This is we knew a little bit about him before this game. Obviously, from the game at Riazor, he was excellent there as well. Everything about him looks like he's going to be a big footballer in the future, and we praise the likes of Antonito for this. We've done the same with Roberto. Yeremay's got a big future ahead of him. Obviously, comes from that factory line of players that's being produced by Las Palmas, those wingers that seem to be popping up everywhere, whether it's Malera, whether it's Yeremay, it could be anything. Very, very good. Bit of a shit house, which is what we like. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, not afraid to take on his man. And I think maybe this is where your school of thought is thinking. I thought Joaquin did his best against a very good competitor in this game, and I'll praise him for it, but he did have him on toast a few times, and his movement off the ball and like I says, his confidence to take on his man and have a shot was just brilliant to watch. And me and my friends who were sat pitch side watching this, we all had the same conclusion. He's going to be the difference, and that turned out to be the case for a short period of time. And he won't be at Depor for long. Again, there will be someone who comes in and picks up a big vid. I think Tom said, my friend who came with me, he's a Hull fan, said, I'm going to tweet the scout at Hull to tell him about Depor's number 10. which gives me what's the guy from Goal Call when he sees Santiago Nunez in LA on a football pitch? It gave me that kind of vibe.
Yeah,
I think he was called Glenn in the film.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, because he's one of the. Is he Baratheon in Game of Thrones, or one of the Baratheons? I can't remember.
Yes, he is. He's
one of the. That's it, Stannis. He's Stannis. He is one of the ones chasing the throne. Is very much part of the Game of Thrones. So
I was like that going. Yes, you tell Hull City that they need to sign this player, because if he's not playing for Depor, then it's good for us.
Well, there's even news today that he's played his last game for Depor. They think could have already happened. Even after the game, they interviewed him and they said, "Are you going to be here by February?" And he just said, he doesn't know. And the name that's being mentioned a lot, particularly in the last 24 hours, is Chelsea. And Chelsea apparently have a plan, and there's a bid. This is all sort of very transfer rumory stuff, and I don't really like that stuff. But there is a lot of that around him. And actually, not even joking, I have seen him linked to Como as well. Como are in for him. Apparently, that'd be cool. But going back,
still only 20, 21 years old. I think it's the same with Mayer on the right as well. Both very young. Obviously, Mayer has got the homeboy connection. He's from Galicia, so he's probably more inclined to want to be successful with his club. But Yeremay is, like I say, from Las Palmas. He's building a career and is going to go on the ladder, and it isn't going to stop at Depor. And I think, is Chelsea a good move for him? Of course it is, profile-wise. Will he probably be sent out on loan to places? Absolutely. But yeah, I had him more down for like a move to
Como.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if I'm thinking more like holistically with football with rose-tinted glasses, but I was like, wouldn't it be good to see him at like a mid-table to competitive La Liga side, and that's sooner. Las Palmas, somewhere where he can make a real difference. I'm actually quite sad to hear that if he goes to Chelsea, then he might end up like it somewhere.
No. The other thing is, if he goes to Chelsea, they think he's going to go to Strasbourg. but I think
That's
Chelsea.
even worse. Oh, that's even worse.
I think Chelsea have got too many players on loan at Strasbourg or something. I read, but
Yeah,
I'm going to say it now. I thought about this the day after, and to be honest with you, the sort of it goes to the Las Palmas link as well. I was thinking of who's like, I was thinking the best young players I've seen at La Rosaleda, particularly from the opposition, and I did think of Malero, but I don't think I've seen a better player at La Rosaleda in this division than him since I've been going. I honestly don't. He was brilliant. He's like, everything he did was like, he did all the fun stuff. Like, obviously he did that rainbow flick over Joaquin in the corner, which didn't fully come off, but I absolutely loved. And he almost nailed it, like the sort of JJ Okocha in the corner thing. It was that spin in the middle of the pitch where I don't know what he did, but just all of a sudden our midfield was gone and he was just at our goal. The thing I like about him as well, and I seem to remember this in the other game as well, and when I've seen highlights of him before, that when the ball comes to him, he's quite decisive. He doesn't arse about with it. He will just hit it. And because he did one in this game, didn't he? Where the ball went across around 20 yards, and he proper put his foot around it. And luckily, Alfonso Herrera was sort of standing where the ball went and sort of had to just get down and grab it. But it even when he hit her, I thought, oh shit! It looked like it was going to go in. And yeah,
well, that's it. They play to his strengths, and as I've said already, the similarities between Depor and Malaga are huge in terms of how they perform in and how they play. You look at Boldini, for example, and the lack of striking options that Depor have got. Obviously, no Lucas Perez in this game, but to be fair, he's not been really playing as a striker. He's been sort of sitting more as a number 10 as of late, but their reliance is in the wings. So again, I actually fear for Depor on the news you've informed me of, that he might be on the move, because if they lose him, they lose an edge that they have over other teams at the minute. And if not, they just become another one. And obviously, they're looking over their shoulder a lot closer than we are. You know what I mean? So again, I do fear for Depor in that scenario.
Before we mention his goal, which was also excellent, I did have a thought on Sunday afternoon. I was because I was thinking, oh wow, he really was spectacular last night. I was like, is this what I think Kevin plays like?
Yes,
and he doesn't.
This is rose tinted glasses Kevin football. But Kevin,
this is when I've had a really boozy day in Malaga. This is what I think Kevin's doing, but he's not.
I would say, could Kevin do it if he had that level of confidence? I don't think we're not talking chalk and cheese. They're not massively far apart with their approach to the game, but I just think Yeremay has got that, like you say, that competitive edge, that confidence, and that decisiveness that Kevin can be hesitant sometimes, but we've seen moments with Kevin where he isn't indecisive and he scores worldies, and he can do those kind of things as well. But I think maybe the more like for like player, as far as we've got concerned, is Antonito, and again, I think we saw some of that this weekend as well. For as much as we're praising Yeremay for terrorizing hockey, and I thought that Antonito had a good job at having a good go at Obrador and Navarro when they were switching over. So it was a fun game for the wingers. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, apart from Kevin, maybe, but
apart from Kevin.
let's quickly just say, Yeremay, I think we've given him enough praise, but we've obviously got to mention the goal. And actually, going on that sort of Kevin theme, Kevin could not score this goal. Kevin would not be this quick of mind, I don't think. Where obviously, Aaron Ochoa Maloney gives the ball away. The ball sort of played, I don't know, was it 25 yards from goal, 30 yards from goal? And Yeremay just takes this little touch, perfect touch around Joaquin, most subtle touch, and runs onto it and just buries it first time past Alfonso Herrera, which we all know is not an easy thing to do. It was a great goal, I thought.
It was excellent to watch, and like you say, a bit heart wrenching, because you thought that Malaga and Depor, neither of them deserved to go ahead in the nicest possible way. But it's those moments of decisiveness and those little marginal gains that you get that it was such a well taken goal, put right in the bottom corner as well. So it's impossible for Alfonso to reach it. Not impossible, because we know he's the master of the impossible, but. Yeah, very good goal. But the thing I'll take away from this is how well Malaga responded to going 1 goal behind. Do you know what I mean? It's easy for them to have been, had the wind taken out of them with that goal, and the way that Yeremay celebrated as well. Again, shithouse, but I love it. Absolute shithouse, but I love it.
Well, let's go to it then, because we had quite a celebration towards the end as well. We did bring him on finally. You could feel the anticipation in La Rosaleda when people realized that finally Chupe was coming off the bench. Before we talk about his sort of heroic equalizer at the end, what did you make of his performance overall?
Excellent. I think for him to come onto the pitch at La Rosaleda, as we've already mentioned, in front of that crowd, in front of that atmosphere, and not look out of place is testament to him. Obviously, seeing him in the flesh for the first time as well, you really take into consideration how big he actually is. He's not a tiny little low weight teenager. He's a big bloke, and he's empowering. But the thing I was impressed from the get go, and what we didn't see from Dione or indeed Labete as a second striker in this game, was how he was playing on that last man and how he was asking for the ball. Very Roberto-esque.
Yeah.
What I mean? Like, he was there. Do you know what I mean?
Do you know what I've got literally written on my notes here? Roberto-esque. Literally, that's the words I've got. Yeah, that's exactly like I think. Obviously, I saw him play for Atletico Malagueño a few weeks ago. It wasn't quite the same sort of performance because I don't know, the game was different. But yeah, I noticed in this game a lot more that sort of threat, that explosiveness, and he was running everywhere. Like you said, he really was like throwing his arms down and saying like, "Give me the ball," and was being like,
"I want it here, put it through there. I'm quite happy to chase." Everything football wise was brilliant, but even everything off the ball was brilliant. The chasing he did, again, I've praised Yeremay for the amount of shit hours he could. You could see him nagging the centre backs, very, very Jamie Tart type thing. And again, I know you're not a Ted Lasso fan, but that I'm going to shit house you and get in your ear straight away. The thing I really liked about him as well, and like I say, first appearance at La Rosaleda, I think, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But in front of that crowd, that atmosphere, and he's buoying the crowd up, this 20-year-old lad making his home debut, going, "Fucking come on," type thing.
Got it going. Got it up another few sort of levels, actually. Because I think him coming off the bench got it a few levels, just the sort of the buzz around him. But yeah, I totally agree. I thought he was, as far as like home debuts go, and to be fair, it pretty much was his debut, wasn't it? Because he only had a couple of minutes away at Granada earlier in the season. Didn't touch the ball. I thought he was excellent and very much deserved his goal. Like you've mentioned him, and we haven't really mentioned him too much. Antonito with a nice cross across the box, and not an easy finish, to be honest with you. He sort of connects with it really well, and certainly we've had our strikers this year not finishing those sort of chances. So. And again, like a lot of pressure on him as a young man to come off the bench and lead the line. I thought it was, great finish.
Like I say, we've been absent of a number 9 this season, really, or certainly a striker who's got that know-how and certainly that tenacity to get your foot in the right place. Tends to be the case. And when you've got wingers who are as explosive as the likes of Antonito, La Rubia, Kevin, we've never really managed to get the ball into the box where the striker's caught up. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've always been looked off the pace where Rocco or Dione might be loitering around the edge of the 18-yard box rather than being in there to make a decisive touch. Whereas Chupe, as we said, he was asking for the ball. He was telling him where he wants it, and he was there to put his foot on it when it was needed. And, it's as if someone's been mentioning this for months now, you know what I mean, in terms of giving this lad his opportunity. But the first thing I'm doing when it comes to the Mirandés game away, which in no mean feat is going to be a tough game considering how well they are performing this season. First name on the team sheet, Chupe. For me, do you know what I mean? I don't see how Sergio Pellicer can do any different.
I can, because just the way I think Sergio Pellicer talked after the game, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I don't know if you saw his sort of evaluation of Chupe. He was, he was praising him, and rightly so, but he was described as another alternative.
Yeah.
Come on,
Which
Sergio.
I think's peak pace area, and this is where pace is good. I can criticize pace for sometimes his tactical awareness, sometimes, and how he manages games. But if there's one thing he's very good at, is handling expectation and handling young players being transitioned into the first team. We look at Kevin, Roberto, Isa Moreno, Antonito, of the sorts. So I think
over the seasons.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this is more to do with how Pace handles introducing him, because the weight of expectation going to Chupe now is just amplified by 100%.
Yeah.
So if he can keep not only the expectation around him grounded, but also for Chupe as well, which I think will be the harder task, given what we saw on Saturday with his enthusiasm, he knows how to manage him, and he'll certainly bed him in there as we go. I think it's great to have this reaction for him, because I think Castell is on the verge of leaving.
Yeah.
So to have a ready-made replacement, which means we can go out into the market and not be too concerned about who we get. Like, I'd love us to go and sign a top striker, but it's just not on the cards for us. So to have him come through and support, it's a bonus, really. We've got to look at silver linings sometimes.
I just get the way Pace is talking, and you're right. I think it is managing expectations and things like that. I just feel at the moment that just the sort of, I don't know, the atmosphere around him. I think we're going to see a lot more of what happened this weekend, where he's going to play at La Rosaleda and play for Atletico Malagueño. So for those that didn't get our sort of silly little joke at the start, he did play twice within 24 hours, scored for the senior team and then scored for the B team the next day. And so a good weekend for him. And yeah, we'll see. I'm with you. I'd start with Mirandes.
It's such a unique way of doing things in Spain, isn't it? As well, that the fact he has the opportunity to do that is great, but the fact that you would rather limit him with the first team to give him minutes with the second team so they can get promotion, when, I'm not saying, and I think we had this conversation this weekend going, tell you what, if Malaga went up to La Liga now, what the fuck would happen? Do you know what I mean? In terms of finances, in terms of stadia, going into the plans of 2030. If we did get promoted this season, Jesus Christ, we'd be fucked.
Can you imagine the sort of crazy gear that Kevin's going to wear on the pitch if we get promoted? Like, all that extra money he'll have.
I think you're right, to be fair, then, Matt. To manage my expectations and to keep me grounded in a very Pace way, I think they'd be spot on. We won't see him leading the line. We'll see these 20, 25-minute cameos, and then you're probably right. He's going to lead the line for Malagueño as well, as they do try and get promotion, which seemingly is very important to the club at the minute.
Yeah, and just perhaps before we wrap things up with Chumbo and Biznaga, I thought it was worth mentioning as well. Pace said something really interesting after the game, I thought, where he said that he mentioned, I think the term I wrote here was like, this team at the moment has the DNA of believing, and La Rosaleda gives points. And then he carried on and said, if this had been played at the Athletics Stadium, we wouldn't have drawn that game, which I thought was quite interesting. I don't know, it sort of seemed like a bit of a dig at leaving La Rosaleda possibly for the next few seasons if that renovation goes. So I thought like you said, the atmosphere was rather buoyant in there, even though, like you said, the team were not there, but who knows, maybe the team would have crumbled and we'd lost 2 or 3-0 if it wasn't for that atmosphere. So yes, when we go to Biznagas, I'm sure we can give a Biznaga to everyone in attendance at La Rosaleda on Saturday. But let's go to on the pitch first. Let's go to Chumbo. I think I've probably highlighted mine to you already. I thought Joaquin had a nightmare. But I do feel a bit sorry for him, because that guy, Yeremay, is obviously very, very, very good. But I think on the pitch, that was our weakness for me. So I don't know if you have anyone different.
See, I'm going to be very controversial here now, and I admit that Joaquin didn't have the greatest game, but I expected that he was going to be, really for want of a better word, butchered by Yeremay. So I think I maybe tempered my expectation around there. I
was.
don't think Lebete had a massively great game this week.
Yeah.
So I think, the fact that he wasn't as effective, and maybe it's because we've been expecting so much from Laruba. He's maybe got big shoes to fill. I don't know.
We got to mention just before you move on then, Lebete, that chance was in the first half where their goalie passed it to us and we passed it to Lebete and we had all the time and he just hit it as hard as he could from about 10 yards and put 20 yards over. So yeah, we should have highlighted that. That was not good. So sorry, carry
on. So he was going to be my chumbo, but for those exact reasons and for the miss, like you said, I actually wasn't massively impressed with Manu Molina this week, which I know is strange for me to say, but I don't know if it's because he came up against a great competitor in the form of Sariano, but he looked really off the pace. Some of his passing wasn't where it usually is, and he looked slow. And again, I just don't know because he's chasing shadows, but he didn't look up to scratch, and which was sad, really, because I said to my friends, I love Manu Molina. He's going to have a great game. And he really didn't.
I didn't say my sort of two dishonorable mentions, and one of them was Manu Molina, and the other one was Kevin. Actually, I thought Kevin had a really not a great game. Actually, sorry, the other one I was going to add, and it seems a bit harsh to get off the bench. I thought Romani was just awful again and just non-existent. I don't know what the hell's up with him.
Well, off the bench players, just to put it out there,
not great.
Aaron Maloney, for me, I didn't think looked that great, and a couple of hiccups with especially in the lead up to the goal. But have you seen his new Preds? Oh, did he look good in Preds?
Oh, I didn't notice.
He usually has the orange boots, doesn't he? But he had a nice set of are they Jude Bellingham Preds now? Is that what we're calling them? White with the red tongs. I thought that feels right.
Okay, yeah. I think, I see like another sub. I always thought Ramon would be more of a Predator person, but I can see that.
I think he does have Preds as well, but OAM.
Okay.
He was full named by Christian Mikowski as well in La Petra this weekend. So that's catching on.
Yeah. Let's go to Biznaga then. I went first, so I'll go first with this one. I think we've gotten a lot of love for Chupete. He's very close to my Biznaga. I think, like you said, Antonito, I thought was good. I thought we haven't mentioned him before. Pastor was really good, actually. I think he had a lot to deal with because of Joaquin was getting sort of thrown all over the shop. But actually, I thought for me, like again, maybe it was the top-down view from up in that upper tier. But the player that stood out for me in this quite stodgy performance for Malaga was Luismi. I thought he held us together as well as anyone. And also, we should mention, he's the one that set up the pass for Antonito to set up Chupete. I know that's not a reason to give him Biznaga, but I thought he was really good in this game. And like you said, it was a tough old game. And I thought he looked, and again, like you've just said, I thought Manu Molina wasn't great. I think he just gave him a bit more work to do than, Manu's very, very consistent and works his arse off. And, I think he did work his arse off in this game, but it just wasn't happening for him. But Luismi, I thought was excellent. So he's my Biznaga, but it was very close because of what Chupete did in the short time he was on the pitch. So I don't know. I got a feeling you might pick Chupete, but you can correct me.
No, I will correct you. As far as honourable mentions go, Chupete, it's a great story, and it's not just the fact that he scored a goal; it's the impact he had when he came onto the pitch. Same with Ramon, really. I thought he was very neat and tidy when he came on. Obviously, didn't do much, but that's a sign of a good centre mid who was just passing the ball around, and again, really helped us go for the jugular a bit. One I do want to mention is really honourably is Danny Sanchez, because I think preview show we not really mentioned loads of Danny Sanchez this season, but when we have, it's never been really that great. But the fact that we're waxing lyrical about Yeremay and not Mela, who in himself is a very talented footballer and very highly rated, and again one that we'd say won't be at Depor for too much longer, I thought he had quite a big game against him.
Purple patch.
Yeah, maybe his hair gave him away for this one, but I thought he handled him very, very well, and his interplay with Antonito as well was really good to see too. I also found it quite funny when Dione and Sanchez were having a bit of a tiff about a wayward pass. I was like, you don't get to say that to him. He saved your life.
Yeah.
He's literally been awarded for saving life. You can't say that to him.
It's I was going to say, I'm glad you mentioned Danny Sanchez, because I don't know if you saw yesterday, there was all sorts of, the usual Malaga changing room shenanigans, and they're all playing jokes on each other and looks like they're just having a lovely time together. And when I saw Danny Sanchez, I did think to myself, oh yeah, he was really good Saturday. We should mention him on the pod, and I'd forgotten. So I'm glad you did.
Yeah, again, like you say, I would always praise him for doing well, and he certainly lifted his performance this weekend. My Biznaga is for Antonito. Again, I thought he's sort of getting back to where we expect him to be after that sort of like little lull around the end of October, November time. So again, I thought he had a really good game here, obviously providing the assist for the goal and being a workhorse throughout. Also had a decent couple of opportunities himself that if we would have taken, we would have been, waxing lyrical like we have for Yeremay. And also maybe a little honourable mention for Sergio Payser, because I don't know if he's done this before, but when we went to 3 at the back, I was very surprised. That little change in system where I thought we were going to lose a striker and take Dione off, but we actually went 3 at the back. I was like, what's happening? What's going on here? So little mention for Sergio for tweaking things rather than just surrendering the point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let's just before we wrap things up, then I'll give a little Sergio Pellicer mention. I was going to perhaps throw this in if it came up. Did you see? I can't remember. I think it was Malaga's in-house stuff. They did a whole little sort of 10-15-minute documentary about his 150, getting to 150 games as manager, but they went back to his day as a player at Malaga and things like that. Did you hear what Sergio Pellicer's nickname was when he first came to Malaga as a player?
No.
So they said his first ever play, like his first movement on the pitch for Malaga, was obviously he was like a defender. I think he said I can't remember the exact line, but he said the player got the ball past me, but the player didn't get past me. And he said from then on he was called El Torito, the little bull.
I can see that, to be fair, as well, because I saw it when I was watching it. I naturally, for me, I was really admiring the shirt that he had with the number 2 on the back, and I've got that shirt. But I'm like, I love that number plate that's on the back of him. Number plate, number set, and just looked really cool. I was just thinking, how good do you reckon a young Payser looked in a Malaga shirt? In that Malaga shirt as well. I said, I bet he was a handsome bastard.
Yes, he was. He was. I think. Sadly for everyone in Spain admiring him, I think he was married quite young, judging from what he said in that documentary. Yeah, he's a very handsome man indeed. Still is Sergio. He still got it. Still got it.
Silver fox.
Absolutely. And we will leave it there, I think. So I'll say, just before we go, I'll say again, there's the Vamos episode out there. So go and listen to that, or Drunk Geary Casters. I think we might put in brackets with it. If you've not listened to it still, the quiz is still there. I'm not going to plug it again, but if you want to take part in that or play along with the Malaga quiz, which has all sorts of twists and turns and guests and nonsense, go and listen to that. And, come back later in the week for the preview show ahead of the game against Mirandés. But for now, I'll say thank you, Nick Bell.
Cheers, Matt. Pleasure as always. Always great to relive a game that we were both at and share those experiences. So, yeah, and thanks for your company this weekend as well. What was it? The Camino de Harrison was well attended and was very good. So I'd recommend it to anyone.
Yeah, come along. For those who don't know, El Camino de Harrison is essentially a bar crawl through Malaga towards La Rosaleda, but very spiritual. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. Tell your friends about it. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow on your podcast thing. Do all those things. And we will see you soon. Hasta pronto. Adios. Vamos Malaga.